Hi everybody, it's Chris from Guilty Words, where we unravel crime one word at a time. At one of Sarah Boone's recent hearings, she accused Judge Kraynick of being retaliatory when he told her she needed to defend herself. His answer really struck me, and I want to read it to you directly. He said, "I promise you I've read everything in the court file. I've read every single letter and I've listened to every single audio. That decision was not made lightly, and it took a lot of time to make that determination and that decision." That made me deep dive into Sarah's letters and into as many of the audios and videos of court proceedings as I could find to look and see what elements may have convinced Judge Kraynick that it was time to let Sarah defend herself. And there were some fascinating patterns and escalations that came out. So let's take a look at them together. Let's take a review of Sarah's lawyers and who left because of Sarah and who left because of other reasons. First was Lydia Labar. She was the original public defender assigned to her. Didn't stay long because Sarah retained private counsel. And that counsel was Mauricio Padilla. Apologies if I'm pronouncing that incorrectly. He was with her for 2 years, a pro bono private attorney. He withdrew in April of 2022 because of irreconcilable differences. Then she went through, in a short span, 3 attorneys. Eileen Forrester, a public defender who withdrew because she had once represented George, actually, in a case of domestic violence against Sarah. The next attorney had to withdraw because he had been a lawyer for one of the witnesses several times. And the 5th attorney had to withdraw as well. Unspecified conflict, but according to Sarah, it's because he was about to leave the area. Then she's assigned Frank Bankowitz, who became her lawyer in July 2022, petitioned to withdraw in December of 2022, was asked to keep going, and finally by September of 23 withdrew because of irreconcilable differences. Next, she had a short stint with a man named Winston Hobson. He became her lawyer September of 23, withdrew by February of 24, irreconcilable differences. And last, Patricia Cashman, selected because of her experience and her ability to work with difficult clients. She became Sarah's lawyer in February of 24, withdrew in June of 24, irreconcilable differences. So yes, Sarah's had 8 attorneys, but 4 left for reasons not connected to her behavior. So tonight, let's look at what happened with these 4. So let's begin first by looking at the language the lawyers used in their motions to withdraw. Sometimes it's difficult to analyze lawyer language because it's so carefully selected. But we do get a few clues on how bad things were going. The other thing that makes it difficult is because of attorney-client privilege, the lawyers can't share details. It's kind of like Meghan and Harry. They can say whatever they want about the royal family because they never complain, never explain. They won't try and answer them. Sarah takes advantage of this as well, throwing out all sorts of insinuations and accusations, and yet the lawyers can only respond in a very limited way, which makes it even more significant when they use unusual or strong language. Mr. Padilla did an incredible amount of work in the time that he was with Sarah, and they were 2 weeks from trial date when he filed to withdraw. They were ready for trial. He had placed at least 9 motions for discovery and supplemental discovery. He had motions for legal phone calls, waiver of a speedy trial, continuances, other things. He had about 24, maybe more, depositions subpoenaed and taken. He had requested and gotten many experts, electronic evidence experts, crime scene forensic experts, forensic psychologist, a private investigator. This is where Prison Break started on, right at the very beginning. They would have been ready for trial, except something went wrong, and what went wrong was Sarah. Now, Mr. Padilla first filed a motion to withdraw, and then a couple of days later an amended motion to withdraw. In his first motion to withdraw, he mentioned irreconcilable differences and said it was impossible for him to effectively represent his client and that he was forced to move to withdraw. When I stopped and thought about it, I realized how incredible this was. This man had been working on this case for 2 years. He had done an incredible amount of work. He was ready for trial. They were 2 weeks away. He was doing this pro bono. The court was reimbursing him for things like travel and lodging and copying and different things, but he wasn't getting any actual lawyer fee. Why was he doing it pro bono? Probably because of the publicity from it, like a lot of lawyers do. So he basically was throwing away 2 years worth of work, and he lost an incredible amount of time. It must have been egregious, whatever was going on with Sarah, that made him pull out at the last minute. On his amended return, Mr. Padilla brought up the idea of the adversarial relationship with Sarah. But he reiterated, however, after further researching the issue, undersigned is still under the belief that specifics on the adversarial relationship may disclose information that may prejudice his client, and as such will stand mute on the specifics. He can't say anything other than it's not only irreconcilable, it's adversarial. And enter Frank Bankowitz, who worked with Sarah from July to December, tried to withdraw then. He as well has 2 motions to withdraw. This is the one from December of 22. He said, irreconcilable differences which have arisen between the undersigned, his client, and his family. That is incredibly significant. What could be going on that would involve his family? Why would Sarah have anything to do with his family? It's incredibly inappropriate. What was she doing that was causing conflict and irreconcilable differences with his family? But at the hearing, he agreed to continue, but things only got worse. In Bankowitz's second motion to withdraw as counsel, he adds intriguing and disturbing details, surprisingly strong for a legal court-filed document. Besides irreconcilable differences, he adds, the defendant will not be satisfied with any attorney unless said attorney does not have a caseload and can dedicate his or her time solely to Ms. Boone's case. He also says, the best possible avenue is to have the defendant represent herself, as no attorney can satisfy her. He doesn't give specifics on what makes him say that, but those phrases themselves are an indication of how bad things are going. His motion to withdraw was granted. The next attorney assigned was Winston Hobson. He was with Sarah from September of 23 until February of 24. He said he'd met with Sarah in the jail and video visits, continued the work of the prior attorneys, consulted with experts to appropriately position the case in the best interest of the accused, given the facts and the allegations in the accusations. Interesting phrase there, to appropriately position the case in the best interest of the accused. And yet, irreconcilable differences, including but not limited to ethical considerations. He is the first lawyer to mention ethical considerations. And again, he can't give the specifics, and Sarah's not telling. Something is going even more wrong when she's asking for something that's making a lawyer question ethical decisions. Last but certainly not least was Patricia Cashman, who handled the case from February of 24 until June of 24, when she as well withdrew for irreconcilable differences. In her motion, she mentioned that the Florida rule regulating the conflict of interest said there's a substantial risk that the representation of one or more clients will be materially limited by the lawyer's responsibilities to another client. I'm wondering if that isn't very similar to what Bankowitz was saying when he said she will not be satisfied unless a lawyer has no other clients. Sarah's demands were so extreme. Ms. Cashman brings up ethical considerations as well. There was a hearing on June 7th where Ms. Cashman was defending her decisions with Sarah, and Sarah was accusing her of lying. And Judge Kraynick took that very seriously and kept trying to get Sarah to say exactly when Miss Cashman had lied. Sarah never actually came up with a specific time, but kept bringing up the idea of bond, and that somehow Miss Cashman had spooked her brother from giving her bond, but that bond could be set at any price because her internet following would come up with the money for her. They haven't come up with the money for private attorneys since she's been pro se, but we won't go there. This is my theory, and I have nothing other than guesswork to back it up, but I wonder if the ethical consideration had to do with the fact that Sarah wanted Miss Cashman to lie to her brother so that he would post bond and not tell him of the consequences to him if things went wrong and how much he had to lose. Let me know what you think in the comments below. What were these ethical considerations? So let's sum up the lawyer's escalating language. Mr. Padilla said that there were irreconcilable differences and then added that it was an adversarial relationship. Bankowitz began with irreconcilable differences, including his family, and then in his second request to withdraw, he added the damning statements, the lawyer can have no other clients and she should represent herself. When it came to Mr. Hobson, there were irreconcilable differences, but also ethical considerations. The stakes were getting higher for the lawyers. And with Miss Cashman, a conflict, maybe other clients, and once again, ethical considerations. But the lawyer's escalating language is still very controlled. Sarah was escalating a lot faster, both with her language and her behavior. Let's take a look at what she had to say about Mr. Padilla when he withdrew. We see the start of some common litanies. He had a commitment to me. He made me believe we were a team. I was blindsided. I do not understand. Thank you that I'm going to be at this hearing because I was able to learn more and also explain. Sarah always wants to explain the ongoing legitimate hindrances I have been facing along with my inability to amply progress in the preparation for my upcoming trial. We looked at the amount that that man had done to prepare for that trial. It was ample. In my opinion, these concerns are what spurred these requests by my attorney in the first place. So at this point, she kind of admits her behavior may have spurred her attorney's withdrawal. One of Sarah's favorite phrases is, in my opinion. In her mind, opinion and fact are the same thing. At this point, Mr. Padilla gets off rather lightly being called unprofessional. Over a year later, she'll talk about him again in a letter and call him much, much worse as her language and behavior escalates. We're not going to go through every piece of every letter Sarah wrote, but I want to hit the highlights of how her language was escalating. With Bankowitz, she begins this habit of excessive counting of selective time. And let me explain what I mean by that. She does a lot of numbers. Mr. Bankowitz had been her attorney for 3,528 hours and counting. Well, is the man allowed to sleep? What she never mentions is things like the 10 to 15 phone calls a day she was making to him, or the amount of time she spent writing letters about him, to him, or any time that his assistant may have worked with her. She's very careful in what she shares with her numbers. In addition, she brings accusations against Mr. Bankowitz and later all the other lawyers. She also starts accusing the judge. She writes an angry letter. At what point do you evaluate and intercede in a case to make sure there's proper advancement? Why are you allowing or enabling my constitutional rights to be continuously violated? Telling a judge that they are deliberately allowing or enabling constitutional rights to be violated is a serious accusation, but she makes it, she doesn't back it up, and she puts it in a letter that's published on the docket, and she knew it would be published. She also makes it clear that she expects the judge to jump when she writes a letter. She says that she's had no answers or phone calls from my attorney, or even a response from you, Your Honor, as if the judge is supposed to start being pen pals with her. These accusations have a flavor of entitlement as well as anger. She goes on further to make veiled threats. First she says, I am in the process of writing to the governor regarding the mismanagement of my case and the multiple added obstacles and deterrents I'm experiencing. She's saying to the judge and the lawyer, I'm writing the governor. I'm trying to pull in the big guns. The letter goes on for another page or so with more complaints, and then she circles back to the governor. I am hopeful the governor will be able to untangle the chaos and mistreatment. She's the victim, but it's this veiled threat. You're not doing what I want, so I'm going to pull the governor in. She also addresses one of her letters to the judge, to the lawyer, and to the whole wide world. And I put that under veiled threat because it's making it clear, one, that she wants the whole world to read it, but also, let me remind you, judge and lawyer, the whole world is watching you. The whole world is listening to what I'm saying to you and about you. Why don't you do what I want? At this point, she also starts copying the letters that she wrote to her attorney and sending them to the judge, knowing they'll be put in the docket and they'll be up for public view. The lawyer doesn't have the luxury of being able to do the same thing. She begins to use increasingly derogatory language about the lawyers. Mr. Padilla had gotten away with just being called unprofessional. Now he's added back into the mix, and we hear terms describing various lawyers as untrustworthy, unreliable, unorganized, that's Sarah's term, misleading, deceiving, stupid, snotty attitude, prejudiced against her, lying, incredibly serious accusations to make against a lawyer, especially deceiving, misleading, and lying, and again, no specifics. Things escalate further as she begins to walk out of conferences with Miss Cashman when she doesn't like what she's hearing. And she also begins to use increasingly derogatory language about the judge. She accused Judge Kraynick basically of being mindless and stupid and listening to lying lawyers too much and not thinking for himself. Sarah demonstrates a number of patterns and themes. I had no idea. I didn't know my lawyer was getting so upset. I don't know why they left. I didn't do anything. I've done nothing wrong. She said that right from the beginning about George's death itself, and she's saying it about everything going on now. My constitutional rights have been violated, but again, when Judge Kraynick tried to press her for specifics, the best she could come up with was, the whole world knows about my case, so I can't get a fair trial. That's not actually having your constitutional rights violated. It's an issue, but it's not a constitutional one. I want to explain, or in my opinion, Sarah's two phrases that indicate what she believes to be true. If you don't agree that it's true, you're wrong and you're against her. Defamatory statements about the judge, about lawyers, about the justice system in general. Hyperbole, half-truths, no specific evidence. I haven't seen any of my discovery, and she has seen at least some, and probably quite a bit of it. Everything has this air of entitlement about it, including the veiled threats. I will write the governor. I am going to make copies of this letter, and I'm going to put it where everyone in the whole world can see it. So what did Judge Kraynick see? I think he saw a woman whose escalating behaviors indicated that they weren't going to turn around, and certainly not with another lawyer. This pattern would just continue and get worse. He saw a woman who needed to have boundaries set, and he set them. Sarah has an unwillingness or an inability to admit anything is her fault or take any responsibility, and may even have some bizarre reason for wanting to delay this trial. I'm not sure what that would be. If you have any ideas, please put them in the comments below. Thank you for spending time with me tonight. I really do appreciate it. And if you've liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you're new here, I'd love to have your subscription and have you join our growing family of true crime word buffs. And until we meet again in the next video, Please use your words wisely and well. Take care.